Joran's ship, the Starwind, landed with a heavy thud on Mezar Station's docking bay. The station wasn't fancy like the core world cities, nor was it a clean, well-maintained place. It was old, patched together with scrap, and smelled of burning metal and engine oil. But it had one thing no other place had: Volok, the best mechanic in this sector. Joran stepped out, dragging his malfunctioning droid, K-12, behind him. The droid, once a reliable companion, had started acting strange. It would stop mid-task, make bizarre calculations, and sometimes whisper things that didn't make sense. At first, Joran thought it was just old age. But then K-12 had started saying something disturbing. "You are not what you think you are." That was when Joran knew something was wrong. Not with the droid, but maybe with himself. Pushing the thought aside, he walked through the dimly lit station, past vendors selling questionable goods and aliens of all shapes and sizes. His boots echoed as he reached a rusted metal door. A flickering sign above it read, "Volok's repairs. No refunds, no complaints." Joran knocked. The door slid open with a creak, and a tall, four-armed alien with dark red skin and glowing yellow eyes stared at him. Volok didn't look surprised to see him. "You're late," Volok said in a deep, gravelly voice. Joran raised an eyebrow. "I didn't make an appointment." Volok grunted. "Didn't need one. I knew you'd come." Joran didn't like that answer, but he was too tired to argue. He pushed K-12 forward. "Droid's broken. Keeps saying weird things." Volok tilted his head, then waved for Joran to bring it inside. His workshop was cluttered with tools, half-finished machines, and glowing blueprints floating in the air. The scent of burning circuits filled the room. Joran crossed his arms as Volok examined K-12. The mechanic's four hands moved fast, removing panels, checking circuits, and running scans. Then he suddenly stopped. His yellow eyes flicked toward Joran. "Your droid is fine." Joran frowned. "What? No way. It's been acting strange for weeks." Volok tapped a sharp metal tool against the table. "That's because it wasn't malfunctioning. It was trying to warn you." Joran's stomach tightened. "Warn me about what?" Volok didn't answer immediately. Instead, he turned and grabbed a scanner, a sleek handheld device with glowing blue symbols. Before Joran could react, Volok ran it over his body. The scanner beeped loudly. Volok's expression darkened. "Now I understand." Joran took a step back. "Understand what?" Volok tossed the scanner onto the table. You're the real problem, not the droid." Joran's heartbeat quickened. He was just a regular human, an explorer, a trader, sometimes a smuggler. Nothing special. "Explain," he demanded. Volok exhaled, then turned the scanner's display toward him. The screen showed a glowing holographic image of Joran's body, but something was off. There were strange metallic lines running through his nervous system, tiny unknown implants in his brain, and energy signatures that shouldn't be there. Joran's breath caught in his throat. "That's not possible." "You tell me." Volok leaned against the workbench, crossing two of his arms, while the other two continued adjusting K-12. "Either you've been living a lie, or someone has erased your memories." Joran clenched his fists. "I'd know if I had implants in me." "Not if they were designed to be invisible," Volok said simply. "Not if they were meant to control you." Joran felt a chill crawl up his spine. He didn't remember any surgeries, any cybernetic enhancements. As far as he knew, he had been born on a human colony, worked as a pilot, and later became a freelancer. But what if that wasn't true? K-12 suddenly powered on, its blue eyes flickering with strange symbols. Its voice was distorted but clear. "They are coming." Joran's pulse pounded. Who's coming?" Volok's expression remained unreadable. "You need to sit down." "I don't need to sit down. I need answers." Joran snapped. Volok sighed and gestured to the scanner again. "You don't remember anything strange." No missing time. No moments where you felt different. Joran wanted to say no, but the truth was there were gaps in his past. Sometimes he would wake up and not remember how he got to a certain place. Sometimes he knew things he shouldn't, like how to bypass high-level security systems or speak languages he had never learned. And then there were the dreams. Dreams of fighting battles he had no memory of. Dreams of voices whispering orders in his ear. Joran swallowed hard. What's inside me? Volek's yellow eyes narrowed. A failsafe. Before Joran could press further, a loud alarm blared through the station. Red lights flashed. Outside, the sound of heavy boots stomping across metal floors filled the air. K-12's head snapped up. They have arrived. Joran's instincts took over. He rushed to the window and saw them. A group of armored figures stepping onto the station, moving with precise, calculated motions. They weren't just any soldiers. They were Threx hunters, elite enforcers of an alien empire. And they weren't here for K-12. They were here for him. Volek grabbed a plasma cutter and tossed it to Joran. You want answers. You'll have to survive first. Joran gritted his teeth and activated the weapon. The glowing blade hummed in his hand. Whoever he was, whatever secrets were buried inside him, he wasn't going down without a fight. Joran's grip tightened around the plasma cutter. The glowing blue blade hummed softly, casting flickering light across Volek's cluttered workshop. Outside, the heavy footsteps of Threx hunters echoed through Mezar Station. He took a deep breath. His mind was racing. Why were they here? Were they really after him? Volek didn't waste time. He rushed to a control panel and flipped several switches. The workshop's metal doors locked with a loud clang, and security barriers dropped over the windows. Move fast, Volek said. They will break in soon. Joran turned to him, his heart pounding. Why are they after me? Volek gave him a hard look. Because you are not who you think you are. Joran gritted his teeth. You keep saying that, but I don't remember anything strange about my life. Volek motioned toward K-12, who was still sitting on the workbench. The droid's blue eyes flickered with strange symbols. Its voice came out slow and distorted. Memory suppression, detected. Failsafe activation, incomplete. Joran clenched his jaw. Memory suppression. That explained the gaps in his past. The strange moments where he knew things he shouldn't. The dreams of battles he had never fought. Before he could process it, a loud bang shook the door. The Threx hunters had arrived. Volek worked quickly, his 4 arms moving in perfect coordination. He grabbed a device that looked like a headset made of dark metal and held it up to Joran. This will help, Volek said. It will scan your mind. Maybe restore what was taken. Joran hesitated. And what if I don't want to remember? Volek's yellow eyes narrowed. Then you will die not knowing why. The door shook again. Dents began forming as something heavy slammed against it. Joran took the device and placed it on his head. Cold metal touched his skin. The moment it activated, a sharp pain shot through his skull. Flashes of images appeared in his mind. A battlefield. Human soldiers fighting. Something monstrous. A secret facility. Machines implanting something inside him. A mission. His hands covered in blood. But whose? Then, a voice. You are a weapon, Joran. And weapons do not ask questions. Joran ripped the device off, gasping for air. His head throbbed, but something was clear now. He wasn't just a simple explorer. He had been trained, modified, controlled. And someone wanted to erase him. Volek watched him carefully. Now do you understand? Joran swallowed hard. I still don't know everything, but I know enough. Volek nodded. Then let's get out of here. Boom. The door exploded inward, sending sparks and metal debris flying. Joran dived behind the workbench as 3 Threx hunters stepped inside. They were tall, reptilian creatures in black armored suits, their glowing green visors scanning the room. Their movements were precise, too precise. They weren't just soldiers. They were hunters. Joran barely had time to react before one of them raised an energy rifle. ZAK. A bolt of blue plasma shot toward him. He dodged, rolling across the floor and swinging his plasma cutter upward. The blade sliced through the rifle, melting it in an instant. Volek grabbed a large wrench and hurled it with unnatural strength. It struck one of the hunters in the helmet, cracking the visor. K-12 suddenly activated, its small body springing to life. It jumped onto one of the Threx, wrapping its metal arms around the alien's neck and emitting a burst of electrical energy. The hunter convulsed and collapsed. Joran didn't stop to think. He moved on instinct. His mind and body knew what to do, even if he didn't remember why. Another hunter charged at him. Joran sidestepped the attack, grabbed the alien's wrist, and twisted it hard. The armor plates cracked. In one smooth motion, he slammed the plasma cutter into the hunter's chest. The alien collapsed with a heavy thud. Only one remained. It hesitated. Joran could feel it watching him, studying him. Then the hunter did something unexpected. It tapped a device on its wrist and spoke in a deep mechanical voice. "Target is active. Initiating retrieval." Joran's eyes widened. Retrieval. They weren't here to kill him. They were here to capture him. Before he could react, the hunter raised its arm, and a pulse of blue energy shot toward him. It hit Joran like a shockwave, sending him flying backward. His vision blurred. His body felt numb. Through his fading vision, he saw Volek grab a large pulse grenade from his workbench. Volek shouted, "Close your eyes, human." Joran barely had time to shut his eyes before a blinding white light filled the room. A loud boom followed. The force of the blast rattled the workshop. When Joran opened his eyes, the Threx hunter was gone, either vaporized or thrown out into the corridor. Volek grabbed Joran's arm and pulled him up. "We need to leave. Now." Joran struggled to stay on his feet. His body felt strange, like something inside him had been shaken loose. He looked at K-12. The droid's eyes glowed as it spoke in a robotic tone. "Your failsafe is breaking. Soon, you will remember everything." Joran's heart pounded. He didn't know if he was ready for that, but one thing was clear. He couldn't stay here. He turned to Volek. "You have a way off this station." Volek smirked. "I wouldn't be alive if I didn't." The two of them rushed toward the back exit, K-12 following closely. Behind them, alarms blared, and distant footsteps echoed through the station. Joran didn't look back. Whatever was buried in his past, whoever he really was, he had no choice now but to find out. Because one thing was clear. The hunt had only just begun. Joran's legs moved on instinct, sprinting through the narrow back corridors of Mezar Station. The walls were damp with oil and grime, the flickering lights above barely illuminating the path ahead. Volek ran beside him, his 4 arms carrying various tools, and a large energy rifle slung over his back. K-12 rolled quickly behind them, its small metal body humming as it processed new data. Behind them, alarms blared. The Threx hunters weren't giving up. Joran didn't know why they wanted him, but he wasn't going to wait around and ask. His body still ached from the shockwave blast the last hunter had hit him with, but he forced himself to keep moving. "How much farther?" he asked, breathing heavily. Volek pointed ahead. "Docking Bay 6. My ship is there." Joran turned the corner and immediately stopped. The corridor ended in a sealed metal door. The control panel next to it sparked, clearly damaged. Joran cursed under his breath. "Tell me you have another way out." Volek pulled a device from his belt, pressing a few buttons. "I can override it. Give me 30 seconds." They didn't have 30 seconds. Heavy boots pounded against the floor behind them. Joran spun around just as 3 Threx hunters entered the corridor. Their green visors glowed in the dim light, their weapons raised. No more running. Joran clenched his fists. The memories from before, the flashes of battle, the training, His body still remembered even if his mind didn't. The first hunter fired. Joran dodged, the plasma bolt scorching the metal wall behind him. He lunged forward, closing the distance fast. With one quick motion, he grabbed the hunter's rifle barrel and twisted, forcing the weapon downward. Then he struck. A powerful elbow to the throat, a sharp kick to the knee. The hunter collapsed instantly. Volek was still working on the door, muttering in frustration. Almost there. Joran didn't have time to wait. The second hunter aimed its weapon, but before it could fire, K-12 launched itself forward. A burst of blue electricity shot from the droid's small body, hitting the hunter square in the chest. The alien convulsed, its armor smoking as it slammed against the wall, unconscious. Joran turned to face the last hunter. But something was wrong. The final hunter wasn't attacking. It tilted its head slightly, as if studying him. Then it spoke in a cold, mechanical voice, initiating command override. A sharp pain exploded in Joran's skull. He dropped to his knees, clutching his head. A horrible ringing sound filled his ears, like metal scraping against metal. Then, a voice. "You are ours, Subject 12. Stand down." Joran gasped for breath. Subject 12. The words felt familiar. But why? Images flashed in his mind, memories trying to surface. A dark room. A voice giving orders. A strange machine buried deep in his brain. They had put something inside him. And now, they were trying to activate it. His vision blurred. His body refused to move. The hunter stepped forward, raising its weapon. "You cannot escape your programming." Volek's voice broke through the pain. "Joran, fight it." Joran gritted his teeth. "Fight it? How?" Then, K-12's voice echoed in his ears. Fail-safe suppression. Breaking. Neural pathways restoring. The droid's words sparked something inside him. A choice. He wasn't just a machine. He wasn't just a weapon. Joran let out a roar, forcing himself to move. His mind felt like it was being split apart, but he didn't let it control him. He lunged forward, grabbing the hunter's wrist and twisting hard. The alien let out a sharp grunt of pain. Joran followed up with a swift kick to the chest, sending the hunter crashing into the wall. The pain in his head vanished instantly. Joran stood there, breathing heavily, as the hunter lay still. He had won. Volek's voice broke the silence. Doors open. Joran turned and saw the metal door sliding upward. Beyond it, a small docking bay stretched before them. And at the center, Volek's ship. The vessel was a rusted but sturdy freighter, built for speed rather than combat. It wasn't pretty, but right now, it was their only way out. Volek rushed inside first, powering up the ship's engines. K-12 rolled up the ramp without hesitation. Joran turned back one last time. The Threx hunters weren't dead. They were still breathing. And one of them, the one that had tried to control him, slowly lifted its head. It spoke in that same eerie voice. "We will find you again, Subject 12. Joran didn't reply. He simply turned and ran onto the ship. The moment he stepped inside, Volek hit the thrusters. The ship lifted off the docking bay, engines roaring. Joran stumbled but caught himself as the freighter shot forward, weaking through the metal framework of Mezar Station. The external alarm systems activated, and defense turrets swiveled toward them. But Volek was already ahead of them, guiding the ship through a narrow escape tunnel. Then, they were free. The blackness of space stretched out before them, distant stars shining like cold fire. Mezar Station shrank behind them, its alarms still flashing like tiny red sparks. Joran sank into his seat, his breathing still heavy. Volek glanced at him. "You okay?" Joran let out a shaky breath. "No, but I'm alive." K-12 rolled to his side, its eyes glowing softly. "More data recovered. More memories will return soon." Joran rubbed his forehead. He wasn't sure he was ready for that, but he had no choice. Something had been done to him, and if the Threx Empire wanted him back, that meant he was dangerous to them. Which meant he had one goal now: find out the truth, and make them regret ever making him. Joran sat in the cockpit, staring out into the vastness of space. Stars stretched endlessly before them, but his mind was focused elsewhere. His fingers tapped against the armrest, his thoughts tangled in the fragments of memory slowly returning to him. The name the Threx Hunter had called him, Subject 12, echoed in his head. He wasn't just some pilot. He wasn't just an explorer. He was something else, something that had been hidden from him. Volok's ship, the Rust Claw, hummed as it cruised through deep space. The old alien mechanic sat at the main control panel, his four hands working on stabilizing the ship's systems. Joran turned to him. "Where are we heading?" Volok didn't look up. "Somewhere safe." Joran exhaled. "That's not an answer." Volok sighed, and finally met Joran's gaze. "You need answers, right?" Joran nodded. "Then we're going to Zentha Prime." Joran frowned. He had never heard of that planet. "What's there?" Volok leaned back in his chair. "A contact of mine. Someone who might be able to decode whatever is inside your head." Joran's jaw tightened. "And what if I don't like what I find?" Volok shrugged. "Then you can pretend it doesn't exist. But I doubt that's an option anymore." Joran knew he was right. The Threx Empire wasn't going to stop. They had gone through a lot of trouble to find him, and that meant he was important. The question was, why? A small beep sounded from behind them. K-12, who had been plugged into the ship's database, suddenly came to life. Its glowing blue eyes flickered as it processed new information. Data decryption. Successful. Joran and Volok exchanged glances. Joran leaned forward. "Decryption. What did you find?" K-12's voice remained calm. "A hidden code was buried within my memory files. A message. It is addressed to you." Joran's heart pounded. "Play it." K-12's eyes blinked once. Then a distorted voice filled the cockpit. "Subject 12. If you are hearing this, it means the failsafe is failing. You are waking up." Joran's hands clenched into fists. "You were created for a purpose. You are not just a soldier. You are the key to something bigger, something the Threx Empire fears." Volok muttered, "This just keeps getting worse." The message continued. "They will hunt you. They will try to control you. But you must not let them. There is only one place where you can find the truth. Goto." The voice suddenly cut off, replaced by static. Joran's stomach tightened. "Go to where?" "Finish the message." K-12's eyes dimmed slightly. "The data is corrupted. That is all I could recover." Silence filled the room. Joran leaned back, rubbing his temples. So many questions. No clear answers. Volok crossed his arms. "Looks like we need to make a stop before Zentha Prime." Joran raised an eyebrow. "Where?" Volok smirked. "Somewhere we can find an expert in fixing broken data." K-12 beeped. "Nearest location with advanced decryption technology. The Black Drift." Joran's stomach dropped. He knew that name. Even with his memory still broken, something inside him told him the Black Drift was dangerous. Volok sighed. "Of course. Why is it always the worst places?" Joran turned to K-12. "What is the Black Drift?" K-12 responded immediately. "A rogue station on the edge of Threx-controlled space. No laws. No rules. Only survival." Volok groaned. "Fantastic. A criminal hideout. My favorite." Joran wasn't sure if it was a good idea, but what choice did they have? He exhaled. "Set course for the Black Drift." Volok shook his head, but started typing into the navigation controls. Joran stared out at the stars again, his mind restless. Something inside him told him this was just the beginning, and the worst was yet to come. The Rust Claw dropped out of hyperspace, and the Black Drift came into view. A massive, chaotic space station floating near the edge of Threx-controlled space. The station wasn't like the clean, structured hubs Joran had seen before. It was a twisted, broken mass of metal, built from the remains of dozens of wrecked ships, all fused together. Small lights flickered across its uneven surface, and the entire structure rotated slowly, like it was barely holding itself together. Joran frowned as he looked out the viewport. "This place looks unstable." Volek grunted. "That's because it is. No rules here, no government, just criminals, smugglers, and people who don't want to be found." Joran sighed. "Great." K-12 beeped, locating possible decryption specialists. Scan complete. Recommended contact, Orna Vex, a former Threx scientist turned Ada broker. Joran raised an eyebrow. "Former Threx scientist." Volek smirked. "Means she probably hates them as much as we do." Joran nodded. "Then let's find her." Volek guided the Rustclaw into one of the docking bays. The station's landing area was just as rough as the outside. Dim lighting, rusted platforms, and broken ships that looked like they hadn't flown in years. As they exited the ship, Joran felt eyes on him. The station was filled with all kinds of beings. Tall, thin reptilian traders, bulky armored mercenaries, and shady figures hiding in the shadows. Everyone here looked dangerous. Joran walked ahead, K-12 rolling beside him while Volek followed, muttering about how he hated places like this. They entered a small, dark marketplace where vendors sold strange alien weapons, black market technology, and mysterious artifacts. The air smelled of oil, smoke, and something Joran couldn't quite place. A small, three-eyed alien in a dirty cloak whispered as they passed, "Looking for weapons, information, or something more illegal." Joran ignored him and kept walking. K-12 beeped. Orna Vex's location acquired. Sector 3, Level 5. They reached an old metal staircase that led up to a higher level of the station. As they climbed, Joran noticed strange symbols scratched into the walls. Messages, warnings. He wasn't sure. Finally, they reached Sector 3, Level 5, a long, dimly lit corridor with flickering lights. At the end was a rusted metal door with a blinking red panel. Volek stepped forward and knocked. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a voice crackled through a speaker above the door. "Who are you?" Joran answered, "We need decryption services. We were told you could help." Silence. Then, the door slid open. Inside was a small, cluttered room filled with holographic screens, stacks of data chips, and strange alien devices. At the center sat a tall, thin woman with silver hair and glowing blue cybernetic eyes. She studied them carefully. "Who sent you?" Joran hesitated, then gestured to K-12. "This droid contains a hidden message. It was left for me. But the data is corrupted." Orna Vex's eyes narrowed. "And why should I help you?" Joran took a deep breath. He wasn't sure what to say. Before he could answer, K-12 projected a broken fragment of the message. "You are the key. Go to." Orna's eyes widened slightly. She recognized something. She stared at Joran. "Where did you get this?" Joran's heartbeat quickened. It was buried inside the droid's memory. "Do you know what it means?" Orna stood up and walked to her console. "I might, but I'll need time to repair the data." Joran exhaled. "How long?" She smirked. "Depends. Are you in a hurry?" Volek crossed his arms. "Let's just say we don't have time to sit and relax." Orna sighed. "Fine. Give me 2 hours." Joran nodded. "We'll wait." But before they could sit, the door alarm suddenly blared. Orna's screens flickered. A warning symbol appeared. Her expression turned serious. "We have a problem." Joran tensed. "What kind of problem?" Orna pulled up a holographic feed from the docking bay. Joran's blood ran cold. Threx hunters had arrived. They were heavily armed, scanning the area. They were looking for someone. For him. Volek groaned. "They don't give up, do they?" Joran clenched his fists. Can you lock the door? Orna smirked. Already did. K-12 beeped. Recommendation. Escape immediately. Joran turned to Orna. Can you move your equipment? She hesitated, then nodded. Most of it, but not all. Volek glanced at the screen. We don't have much time. Those hunters will start questioning people soon. Orna sighed. Fine. There's an emergency exit through the back. Leads to a service tunnel, but it won't stay hidden for long. Joran nodded. Then let's move. Orna grabbed a small device from her desk, probably the decrypted data, and stuffed it into a metal case. Joran peeked through a small window in the door. The Threx hunters were getting closer. They didn't have much time. He turned to the others. Let's go. Joran's pulse pounded in his ears as he led the group toward the emergency exit. Behind them, the sound of the station's alarm still echoed through the corridors. Orna moved quickly, packing a small metal case with the decrypted data. Her silver eyes scanned the room one last time before she turned to Joran. Let's move. The Threx hunters won't take long to find this place. Volek grunted. Yeah, and I'd rather not be here when they do. K-12 rolled ahead, scanning the exit. Pathway clear. Opening the hatch. A small hidden door at the back of the room hissed open, revealing a narrow service tunnel. The walls were lined with flickering wires, leaking pipes, and old metal panels covered in grime. Joran motioned for everyone to move. Go, go. They hurried inside, and Orna sealed the hatch behind them just as heavy footsteps echoed from the other side of the door. Joran heard the Threx soldiers shouting outside. They had arrived. Volek muttered. That was close. Orna led the way through the tunnel, her movements quick and precise. This passage connects to the lower maintenance levels. If we reach the old cargo bay, we can take a ship out of here. Joran glanced back. They had no time to waste. As they moved, the tunnel became darker and tighter. Sparks flickered from broken electrical panels. The air smelled of oil and rust. Then, a sudden vibration shook the tunnel. Joran stumbled. What was that? K-12 beeped. Explosion detected. The Threx hunters have breached the entrance. Volek cursed. They're fast. Orna stopped at a control panel and quickly hacked into the station's systems. I'll slow them down. She pressed a few buttons, and a heavy blast door slammed shut behind them, sealing the tunnel. Joran exhaled. That should buy us some time. They kept moving, their footsteps echoing in the narrow passage. After a few minutes, the tunnel opened into a wider chamber filled with massive storage containers and broken machinery. Joran looked around. Where now? Orna pointed to a rusty door on the far side. That leads to the old cargo bay. But before they could move, a red warning light flashed on the walls. K-12's voice turned urgent. Danger. Motion detected ahead. Joran's hand went to his blaster. They're waiting for us. Volek groaned. I knew this was too easy. Orna pulled a small device from her belt. I have a surprise for them. Joran nodded. Let's be ready. They moved carefully toward the exit, weapons drawn. As they reached the door, it suddenly slid open, revealing 3 armored Threx soldiers standing inside, weapons raised. One of them pointed at Joran. Subject 12, surrender now. Joran's blood ran cold at the name. They knew who he was. The soldier took a step forward. We don't want to destroy you. We only want what's inside your head. Joran's grip tightened on his blaster. Yeah, I want the same thing. Before the soldier could react, Orna threw her device. A small pulse grenade exploded in a flash of blue energy, disabling the Threx soldiers' weapons for a moment. Joran and Volek fired their blasters, hitting 2 soldiers before they could recover. The third one dived for cover, but Orna took him down with a precise shot. The room fell silent. Volek exhaled. That was fun. Joran shook his head. We need to keep moving. Orna quickly accessed the door's controls, overriding the lockdown. The cargo bay doors slid open, revealing a massive hangar filled with old, abandoned ships. Joran scanned the area. Which one works? K-12's eyes flickered. Scanning. Functional ship detected. Docking Bay C7. They sprinted across the hangar toward the indicated ship, a small, sleek transport with faded markings on the side. Orna quickly accessed the ship's control panel, her fingers moving across the screen. I can get this running. Volek kept watch, his blaster ready. You better hurry. Joran could already hear the Threx soldiers approaching. More alarms blared across the hangar. Then, the ship's engines roared to life. Orna grinned. Get in. They rushed inside, and Orna sealed the hatch. Joran ran to the cockpit, taking the co-pilot's seat while Orna prepared for takeoff. The station's external defenses activated, and the hangar doors started closing. Joran saw Threx soldiers rushing toward them, weapons raised. Volek groaned. They just don't quit. Joran grabbed the controls. Then let's give them something to chase. The ship blasted out of the hangar just as the doors slammed shut behind them. Outside, space stretched before them. But the danger wasn't over yet. Orna pointed to the sensors. We've got incoming. Joran looked at the screen. A squadron of Threx fighters was already in pursuit. K-12 beeped. Enemy ships approaching. Engaging evasive maneuvers. Joran clenched his jaw. Hold on, this is going to get rough. As the enemy ships closed in, Joran knew one thing for sure. This fight wasn't over yet. The ship shook violently as laser fire streaked past them. The Threx fighters were closing in fast, their sleek, dark ships moving with deadly precision. Joran gripped the controls tightly. This isn't looking good. Orna worked furiously at the console. I'm trying to push more power to the engines, but this ship wasn't made for combat. Volek strapped himself into a seat. Then we better hope Joran knows how to fly. K-12 beeped. Warning. Enemy ships preparing to fire. Evasive action recommended. Joran pulled the controls sharply, sending the ship into a sudden dive. The force pressed them against their seats as they narrowly dodged a barrage of blazing red laser bolts. Hold on, Joran shouted. He twisted the ship to the left, skimming dangerously close to a massive asteroid floating near the Black Drift. One of the Threx fighters wasn't fast enough. It clipped the asteroid and exploded in a fiery burst. Volek cheered. That's one down. But the other fighters were still on their tail. Orna checked the scanners. We need a way out of here, fast. Joran's mind raced. They couldn't outrun the Threx ships forever, and they were too outgunned for a direct fight. Then he saw it, a massive debris field ahead, filled with wrecked ships and broken satellites. He grinned. I have an idea, but it's risky. Volek groaned. Oh, great. Another one of your crazy plans. Joran punched the thrusters and dove into the debris field. The ship weaved through the floating wreckage, dodging twisted metal and shattered hulls. The Threx fighters followed, blasting away pieces of debris to clear their path. Orna's eyes widened. This is insane. Joran smirked. Exactly. They won't expect what I'm about to do. He pulled the ship into a sharp turn, heading straight for a massive, derelict battleship floating ahead. The old warship was split in two, with a narrow gap between the broken halves. Volek's eyes went wide. No way. We won't fit through that. Joran gritted his teeth. We don't have a choice. K-12 beeped rapidly. Collision risk, 89%. Structural integrity of this vessel, not guaranteed. Joran pushed the ship to full speed, racing toward the gap. The broken walls of the old battleship loomed ahead, jagged metal glinting in the dim starlight. The Threx fighters were right behind them, firing relentlessly. One shot grazed their hull, shaking the ship. Alarms blared. Orna shouted, "Shields are failing." Joran narrowed his focus. The gap was getting closer. He could feel the ship's controls fighting against him. But he kept steady. Almost there, he whispered. At the last possible second, He angled the ship perfectly and squeezed through the narrow opening. Sparks flew as the sides of the ship scraped against the broken metal, but they made it through. One of the pursuing Threx fighters wasn't as lucky. It slammed into the wreckage and exploded in a bright fireball. Volek whooped. That was insane. Joran quickly checked the sensors. 2 more fighters left. Orna pointed to the nav screen. If we can reach that asteroid belt, we can lose them. Joran nodded. Let's finish this. The remaining Threx ships were still chasing them, but their movements were more cautious now. They had seen what Joran could do. He suddenly cut the engines, letting the ship drift into a slow spin. The enemy pilots didn't expect it. They overshot, passing in front of him. Joran slammed the thrusters back on and fired the ship's only rear cannon. A direct hit. One of the enemy ships exploded instantly. The last fighter hesitated. Alone, without backup, it seemed to reconsider the chase. Then, after a moment, it turned and jumped to hyperspace, retreating. Orna sighed in relief. We did it. Joran exhaled, his hands still tight on the controls. They had survived. K-12 beeped. Threat eliminated. No further hostiles detected. Volek stretched. That was too close. Joran guided the ship away from the wreckage and toward open space. Orna leaned back in her seat. Now that we're safe, we need to talk about what's on this data chip. Joran nodded. Yeah. What did you find? Orna pulled out the small metal case and connected it to the ship's main console. A holographic display flickered to life. A distorted voice spoke. Joran, if you are seeing this, it means you are ready. Joran froze. His own name. The message was meant for him. The voice continued. The Threx have hunted you for a reason. You are not just an ordinary human. You are part of something bigger, something they fear. Orna's eyes widened. What does that mean? Joran swallowed. I don't know. The message kept playing. Find the lost colony of Eridan. The answers you seek are there. Then the recording cut off. Silence filled the cockpit. Volek crossed his arms. Eridan. That's just a myth. Joran stared at the screen, his mind racing. The Threx had been after him this whole time, not just because of the data, but because of who he was. He had to find Eridan. Orna studied him. So, what's the plan? Joran took a deep breath. Then, with a determined look, he set the coordinates. We go to Eridan. The ship's engines roared to life, and with one final jump, they vanished into hyperspace, toward the truth, toward danger, and toward Joran's destiny.